Okay, it's Rhonda Thomas again, and we're just about to finish up Personal Finance, Chapter 11, Static Problems. So we are on the hardest problem, in my opinion, of the whole course. And it's got to be about health insurance, okay? So let me go back to sharing my screen. Okay, let me go back to sharing my screen and okay, so let's refresh our memory. This is a health insurance problem. What happens when you start a new job or move jobs is sometimes you need to evaluate the different medical health care plans that an employer has. Okay, so Riley is doing that. Riley just started with a new employer and he has to make a decision which plan to pick. They have a Blue Cross and Blue Shield plan. They have an HMO plan. And they have a POS plan that has quite a bit of detail to it. Here's how I like to start this problem. I actually like to start with the third paragraph, okay? You have to kind of have an idea of about how much you think your medical bills will be in a given year in order to evaluate which medical plan to work with, okay? So all you have is last year or whatever the doctor says about you to be able to do that. So we are going to put down what Riley's medical costs were last year. That's first. Okay, that is first. All right, so let's see if we can read it, and it's right here. So it says Riley decided to review his medical bills from the previous year to see what costs had incurred to help him evaluate his choice. He visited his general physician 4 times. So I've got one line that says 4 times 150 each. So he spent $600 for 4 doctor visits. He had 2 prescriptions. One cost $75, one cost $89. So I've got $75 and $89 being added up to $164. When I add both of these costs together, it comes out to $764. Okay, that's last year's medical. Now we're going to the Blue Cross part. The Blue Cross part is A. It's right here. Okay, so let's pull out the particulars. So when you have insurance, most employers have you help pay a premium. Premium is the cost of the insurance, usually paid by the month or by the paycheck, so that your policy is active. Okay, so it says that the premium a month is $62. All right, so this is from the employee. So I've got 2 versions here because unfortunately this amount that you see, $1,536.80 is not correct. And let me prove to you why that is. Okay, so we've got an annual premium, once again, of $62 a month times 12. So that's $744. And we have an annual deductible of $800. Well, for this particular scenario, if he goes by last year's medical costs, his medical costs do not surpass this deductible. Okay, it does not. But if it did, then you would put this number here. All right. If you did, but it doesn't. And then there's a third line. If you meet your deductible, then any money after that deductible out of pocket from the patient will be 20% that he has to pay. All right. But here's the deal. And here is the corrected version. If your annual deductible is not met, then that 20% co-insurance does not count. No. So he hasn't surpassed his deductible yet. So yes, we have the annual premiums. Those are the same. Then we have to use the entire bill. Okay, the entire bill is $764. Well, $764 is not past that deductible. It's just under, right? It's just under. And therefore, the 20% provision does not start. Okay, now, if he ends up with more medical bills than the $764, anything past that 800, he'll owe 20% of what's past 800, right? So I'll give you an example. Okay, I want to show you this now. This is wrong, but this is what it takes for this to go in here correctly and answer correctly. But this third line, that third line, 20%, that is not going to reduce, right? That is not going to reduce this medical bill. No. Okay, it's not. So what we need to do is, instead of putting the annual deductible, $800 deductible not met, use total bill. Okay, total bill. So when your annual deductible is not met, and I want to put this very clear, when it's not met, comma, use the total bill of, and I can't get that on there. So the total bill, one more time, is $764. So this line gets a 0 when you don't meet your deductible. And when you take $744 plus the entire medical bill of last year, we're at $1,508. So this should read $1,508, but it's not. So I'm going to turn this in, and I'm going to prove this to you. So let's pretend for a moment that the deductible was $300. Okay, let's just pretend we're going to put $300 in. Okay, if it was $300, then let me show you how this would work. Okay, if it was $300 instead of the $800, then you would have an amount left over after you met the deductible. Okay, and then you would owe 20% of that. So what I'm doing in this formula here is I'm taking the medical costs he had last year, I'm subtracting the deductible, and anything left over comes out of his pocket at 20%, right? So then this line would kick in, but it's only when the deductible is less than the actual medical costs for the year. Okay, so that would be what it looks like. All right, I'm going to submit that this is wrong, but I do want you to go ahead and put in the amount, even though it's incorrect, and I've got to send in a correction. Okay, let's move on then. So now we have the other ones, and we're going to see if they're right. Okay, so now we go to, and I'm going to go back and put my $800 in because I want to be able to show what they've done wrong. Okay, so I've got to put that back, but that's all right. That's what putting formulas in helps you understand where something went wrong. I knew I just had to think about it first before I could address whether they were wrong or I was wrong. So once again, here is how they're getting that $1,536.80. But there is no way that this line is going to help reduce the actual cost. Okay, they're going to have to pay the actual cost of the medical bill because it didn't reach the deductible. If it was exactly $800, then we wouldn't put anything. But if you don't meet, if the medical bill is anything $800 or less, then this third piece of his cost will just be 0, just like I put here. Okay, I put that there. So I at least accounted for that 20%. Okay, so now he's gonna have to see if he picks Blue Cross, this is how much it will cost him. Okay, this is how much it'll cost him if his medical costs actually go up, then this might be a different story. Okay, and it will be a different story. All right, so now let's go figure out whether or not the HMO plan, how much it will cost. Okay, so let's see what it says. HMO says that co-pays for doctor visits are $20. Okay, and he made 4 of those. So I'm going to put that in my formula here. So if HMO costs $20, I need 20 times 4, which is $80. Yep. And then his co-pays for his prescriptions are $10. Okay, $10. So he had 2 prescriptions, all right, at $10 a piece. So $10 times 2 is $20. So it looks like his annual costs, if he repeats the same medical problems as last year, will be about $100. Well, already this HMO is starting to look like a much better deal. Okay, so once again, this is all based on whether his health repeats what it did the year before. Okay, if it gets worse, then this HMO, and he has to go to somebody out of the network, somebody not on the list, he might be out a lot of money. I don't know. So there's a lot of what ifs here, and that's okay. That's how life is. All right, so that one's okay. Now let's go to the PPO. Now this is the hardest one to figure. It's the hardest one to figure. So it says the POS requires that the employee pay $32 a month. So it has a premium cost. So let's get started with that first. It starts with $32 a month. And we want to annualize that by taking it times 12. Okay, so let me put this into my formula here. It took me a while to come up with this, so I think I've got it pretty good. So $384 is what he'll be paying in premiums. Okay, now let's read the rest. If the employee uses healthcare providers within the plan, okay, within the plan, so that would be in network, the co-pays are the same as described above for the HMO plan with no annual deductible. Employees can also choose a healthcare provider out of the network and pay 20% of all charges, excuse me, after paying a $600 deductible. Okay, so now what we have to do is it says the POS will pay 80% of those covered visits. So that is hard. Okay, it's hard. Yikes. Okay. All right. It says for the purposes of the POS computation, this is way too hard. Assume that Riley visited a physician outside of the network, but had his prescriptions filled at a network approved pharmacy. So the out of network charges is going to be going to the doctor. My annual deductible, according to C, is $600. Now I know the annual deductible for Blue Cross was $800, but this is a different plan. So what's going to happen is if last year, remember last year, his doctor visits were 150 each. Okay. So we're going to put that in, and anything after, we got to take 150 times 4 minus the deductible. Now my deductible is 600, right? So there's 600 minus 600 times 20. So this is going to be 0, I believe. Okay, so let me put this in. I got to put that $150 charge for going to the doctor. I've got to put in the $600 deductible. So deductible is just met times 20%. That's going to be 0. So there's not going to be any 20% of any after deductible amounts. So that's 0. Now I need to change his copay for his prescriptions. So prescription. And I've got to change the spelling of prescription. There it is. Prescription copays are $10 now, not 5. So 10 times 2 is actually 20 bucks. So boy, there's a lot of what ifs there. So let's review. His premium, $384. His out of network charges. So if his doctor is out of network, you can't use those copays from the HMO. He has to pay a deductible. Then he has to see if there's anything after the deductible to pay 20% of. Well, it just so happens that his doctor visits of $150 add up to $600. His deductible is $600. So 20% of 0 is 0. But his prescriptions are in network. So therefore he pays $10 for each of those, and that's 20. So if I add up all of these, and if I've got everything in there right, it should be $1,004. Let's see if Connect is following this or not. Yes. Okay. So if you had these 3 plans to pick from, even though this is wrong, probably the best plan, as long as everything stays the same, is the $100. Gosh, between the two, you'd save $900 with the PPO by using HMO, and using HMO would save you about $1,400. Yeah, so they did not follow through with their first scenario of the Blue Cross Blue Shield one, and I've got to report it. Okay, so I'm sorry that was so difficult. I don't want to exit. I don't know if it'll let me. Probably have to go back in. Okay, so now I think we're ready for number 10, thankfully. Woo, that was tough. I had to sit and think about that and stop the video just to make that happen. But that's the way it goes. When you have documentation of how something is calculated, that's how you can find out whether you're in error or not. Okay, I got to go back in to Connect. So bear with me a minute. I got to go back in. Okay, I'm going to go to assignments, go to module. This is chapter 11. So sorry that this took so long. Down to chapter 11's static problems. So I will make sure that you don't get tested on that problem. Even if we review it again, that is way too much. I've had a pretty fair amount of experience with billings in insurance, and I just got lucky to come up with a way that I could understand it. But insurance understanding takes some time, and you have to put everything down, and you have to make sure all your formulas are right. And I wouldn't want to have to work in an insurance company that answers claim questions, because that would be hard to explain. It's hard enough to teach it. All right, I think we're finished. We're ready for number 10 now. 10, 11, 12. Thanks goodness. All right. Let's see where we're at. Thank goodness for Excel. Never would make it. Now I'm gonna print out just that little section in Excel showing that work, showing the difference in the total cost for Blue Cross Blue Shield. They're off. They're off by a certain amount. All right. Number 10, Ariana's healthcare policy includes a $1,200 deductible and a co-insurance of 20% of the bills after the deductible. Her total bill is $4,100. What's Ariana's total cost? So Ariana is the one that's insured. This is the out-of-pocket for Ariana. So let's change that deductible. Okay, let me put this to the top here. $1,200 is the deductible. The patient pays 20%. After that, insurance pays 80%. If your total bill is $4,100 and we have a deductible of $1,200, that leaves $2,900. Okay, $2,900. $2,900, 20% of that. Okay, 20% of $2,900. Let me make sure that I've got that in here. 20% of $2,900 is $580. Okay, so then the patient pays, okay, patient pays the deductible plus 20% of the remaining medical bill. So we got $1,200 plus $580. Okay, $1,200 plus $580. Okay, just a minute. We're going to finish this and get this video done. All right, so let me plug it in. So remember, the total bill is $4,100, right? $4,100. So if you take $1,780 and add $2,320, that adds up to the total bill of the $4,100. So having that as a double check can oftentimes help with making sure you got the right numbers. So 1,780, let's see what Connect says. Okay, Connect, come on. Okay, yep, Connect agrees with the amount I came up with. Okay, number 11 is a time value of money problem. This year, Mark spent $9,500 on his health care. If this amount increased by a 4% inflation rate, what would be the amount Mark would spend in 5 years on his health care? So once again, 9,500 is correct. So that's good. Let me move this over a little bit. Okay. We're looking for how much it's going to be in the future, but we have a 4% inflation rate, and we're looking at it 5 years into the future. So a little different than what I had the last time. This is the future value of one amount, future value of $1. So that's table A. Okay, so once again, 4% in 5 years. We need a different factor. 4% in 5 years. So we're going to go look at the table. Okay, go look at the table. We found one that wouldn't accept the table. Doesn't have that range. That's too bad. All right, so my table is right here. We want a future value of $1. We're looking at 4% in 5 years, which is 1.217. 1.2, I got to read it again. So 4% in 5 years, 1.217. There we go. So looks like our future value of $9,500 today that we're spending on healthcare, if inflation keeps up at 4% a year after 5 years, that new amount becomes $11,561. Now let's run it through the calculator, see if we get anything close. So 9,500 in today's money. What's the future value gonna be if it's 4% inflation at 5 years in the future? So it looks like it should be 11,558.20. All right, so that's pretty close, within a few dollars. I'm gonna put in from the table, because when I put one of these in earlier, it didn't accept it from the table. And it should have a range instead of an exact amount, because these problems start having rounding issues in Excel and other calculators. Just depends on how they're programmed to round. All right, and I'm gonna see if it accepts it from the table. Otherwise, I'm going to have to, okay, so that took the table and the calculator. But like I said, I had one before, so I've got two to turn in to connect. That's not quite right. All right, last one, guys. Woo, this one was tough, but we're tougher. Okay, so last one. There's that per capita again. Remember, per capita means per person. If per capita spending on healthcare is $12,555, if inflation is 6%, how much will the spending be 6 years from now per person on healthcare, right? So I got to put that just like what we just did. $12,555. We're looking at inflation of 6% after 6 years. Okay, so one more time. This table is going to be table A. It's the future value of $1. Okay, yep. And we're looking at 6% in 6 years. Gotta change my story here. Okay, so now I need to go look up the factor. All right, same table that we just got through using. 6% in 6 years is factor 1.419. 1.419. There it is. So about 17,815.55. Now let's check it with the calculator. So $12,555 is today's money. If the rate changes, if inflation is 6% after 6 years, 1709, which is not as close as it usually is, 1709.51. Now I'm going to double check. Okay, annually, 6 years, 6%, going back again. So 6% in 6 years, either one of these should work. I'm going to put it in from the table first to see if it has the range that I'm wanting it to have, like we're used to. Should have a range. Okay, it doesn't like that. Doesn't like table. So doesn't like table. Okay, so I'm going to put that on here, and I'm going to make sure I put it in right. So 17,815.55. 17,815.55. Now I'm going to put it in from the calculator. Okay, from the calculator. So beside my problem, so I can see it. I don't remember numbers very good. All right, and we want to go back and make it answer again. So now we're going to put in from the calculator 17,809.51 and see if it likes that number. Should take either one. Yes, it did take this one, but it didn't take this one. So now I've got 3 to report in. That's not, doesn't have a range. Okay, it doesn't have a range. All right, that's it. That's it for, you just made it through, in my opinion, the hardest problem of the course. Okay, that was that healthcare problem. And even Connect itself wasn't up to the challenge, but we are, right? We are. And so once again, numbers tell a story, but sometimes they don't tell an accurate story. Okay, so all numbers should be tested at pretty much all times to see if you can get it to calculate what it should be. All right, we're gonna say goodbye for now because I gotta go submit Connect's boo-boos. All right, so let me stop sharing, and I'll say goodbye for now. See you on the next personal finance video. Peace out.